Now, generally in the world, people in their everyday lives are responsible in the sense that they're able to respond. That understanding seems to be true and helpful. To claim as an objective truth that people caused what happened in their life is probably neither true nor helpful for most people. And that's the notion we're working on, right now. Now, a medical friend of mine, a doctor, once said that when he was in training, he went to Africa to study African medicine, and he went way out into the jungle somewhere and to a small village to see how they handled sickness. And he said it was fascinating for his Western trained mind, which is really about sort of separate, you work on one person and they did something and they got sick and then you fix them. And what happened was he goes there and there's a person that's sick. So the village has this person go, stay in his hut or her hut, resting, and they convene a village meeting. All the rest of the village gets together. And the question they have is, okay, what's going on with us? Or if you will, how did we cause that person to be sick? And they're solving the problem from a total communal we space. And there's not even a thought about necessarily what this guy or gal did that they got sick. It's us, we the environment, we the context, if you will, we the story. We're somehow took actions, had some thought, did something. I don't know if they said we didn't love effectively, but probably something like that, such that person is sick. So a total communal responsibility. We are responsible for that person's sickness, and we solve it over here with us, not over there with them. And my doctor friend said he tried telling, his Western medical friends about that degree of communal responsibility for wellness. And that, they regarded wellness as the natural state. And so if somebody wasn't well, there was some violation of the environment, of the natural state of things, which the community was and was responsible for fixing. Fascinating story. Now, Mark called me yesterday, and I must say, I got his whole allocation of energy for the day in our talk, as he said, because he has COVID. And we had an intense discussion on victim responsible cause and how important it is that we get that accurate in a way that will serve people and will work to evolve the source code. And I must say, we're in process. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to having it the way Homo Amor would have it, having it a way that truly helps people in their journey to become their unique selves. It still and was a wonderful struggle for me to be in this conversation. Victim, responsible, cause. And we got to get it right to have a world that works for everyone. Now, we're called a think tank. The Center for Integral Wisdom is a think tank, and what think tanks do is they struggle with stuff to get it right. So Mark and I have been struggling on this issue for a long time, actually for many, many years. So in the recent text to Mark, let me just behind the scenes, Mark says, do we have full responsibility for everything? And does the interpretive lens of full responsibility work for all situations? It's something you and I have discussed for 10 years. And then another one, is there another word besides victimhood to acknowledge the limits to our responsibility? What about Holocaust victims, rape victims? What about this thing about shaming the victim? How would this show up in a code? Now, of course, that was before it's now shown up in the code, but behind the scenes, we're doing this. Some of my text back to Mark. Objectively, there are often victims, objectively. There are victimizers, objectively. The Jews were victims in the Holocaust. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so not responsible in that situation because it's an objective fact, but a chosen perspective, which empowers. As Viktor Frankl says, people, even in the concentration camps, could be responsible at least for the meaning and attitude they brought to that situation, regardless of the circumstances, which they couldn't do much about. Responsibility, able to respond. Now, intention today, I guess is for you to accept my invitation, which I'm making now, to enter into this struggle, to have this distinction clear, right, powerful, and serving, the evolution of the source code. And I have to confess, even though yesterday in my conversation with Mark, which we've been having for 10 years, I took some ground in seeing my truth, the way I got it, as a partial, good, but partial. It felt like a breakthrough. But I also want to confess that as soon as I hung up with Mark, all my old paradigm kind of came roaring back and wanted to bite me in the ass. So I'm still in process. Responsibility, and as I presented a few weeks ago, declaring I'm the cause of what happens in my life because I say so, has been a load-bearing beam for me in my work as a trainer and coach for 40 years. So it's disorienting to go to a next step, to go beyond my current paradigm, I guess. But I'm working on it, and I think I'm getting there. Knock on wood. Now, hopefully today, when we're done, we'll all be at least a little clear on victim responsible cause, and if not clear, then maybe a little more passionately confused than we were before. Now, for those of you who were with me a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I was at my sister-in-law Mary's service. She died about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And my nephew did a slideshow of her life from beginning to end in about 5 minutes, from Mary as a baby, elementary school, high school, college, get married to my brother, kids, grandkids. And it was like a powerful, disorienting, provocative 5 minutes to go, wow, a whole life from beginning to end, the choices she made, the difference she made or didn't make. Wow. Now, as I thought about it, and it's by way of introduction of me to you and where I am in this struggle, my slideshow would, somewhere in the middle called career, have me on a platform working with 200 people, 5-day training, committed to having their life matter the way they want it to matter. I probably work with, I don't know, 40, 50,000 people in my lifetime. And what I will say about that is if making mistakes helps you to learn, then at this point in my life, I'm a goddamn genius, given the mistakes that I have made. I also said recently that when I do a training, I generally, I'm pretty confident I'm going to win because I know the secret that they don't necessarily know is that they want to be loved, they love, and they are loved. And I know that, I speak to their inherent goodness, their inherent responsibility, their inherent unique self. That's what I'm looking at when I'm talking to. And I often say to groups, if you could see myself through your eyes, you'd be so excited you probably couldn't sit still. Now, I also, when I present stuff, now I'm getting back to responsibility, I say, look, I'm not presenting you these ideas as like the answer or the way, the truth, and the light. I'm presenting them like a coat for you to try on, experiment with, and see if it works for you. So I'm committed to workability, not so much to having the right answer. And I must say, in my work now with Mark, I moved over to being committed to having the right answer that works in all situations. And remember, that I just said that works in all situations, that withstands, onslaught from different people going, what about? It stands tall, it stands true. A few weeks ago, those of you who were with us, I heard me mention this exercise in the LifeSpring training where you get a partnership and one person convinced the other person that some situation in their life where they feel they were a victim, they were a victim. They got to convince the person. And then after they've done that, and most people, 80%, convince the other person that they were a victim. There's nothing they could have done about this. It just happened to them. Then I say to the group, okay, same person, same situation. Now your job is to adopt a different perspective on that. Tell that story from a responsible point of view. Like you set it up to happen just like it happened, parentheses, you caused it. Now, when I present that to people, there's usually a dead silence, like I've asked them to swallow a poison pill. And then we do the exercise. And, usually half, not usually more than half, not as many who did the victim version of it, convinced their partner they were responsible, they caused it. And it is common, I certainly put myself in this category, that once people have seen that perspective taking and the experience that goes with it and the power that comes with it and the relaxation, the shoulders straightening, the pride that comes from adopting that perspective, people get giddy. And they often share about how exciting, how wonderful it was. Now, the people who didn't get off of being a victim, they didn't really get into it 100%. And I tell them, just get off for a few minutes, then you can go back to being a victim right after. They listen to these people with their experience and going, wow, like they're crazy. I was talking to Tom Goddard, who you may be familiar with, and he's done the Life Spring training. And he himself said, that exercise changed my life. That was the most powerful thing I did. Wow. Now, having said that, I'm going to come back to that in a little while and tell you some of the problems with that I see with my stand about responsibility in the way I got it. I actually hope some of you actually did this exercise. I suggested that you do it, and maybe you can relate more and more powerfully to what I'm saying. But even imagine that you did it. Work it out in your imagination. You can probably do it in about 30 seconds. So even you could do it now. So my intention is to invite you into this struggle about distinguishing victim, responsible, cause. So first, in a recent note to Mark, preparing for today, I should put my cards on the table, but here's what I told Mark, and this fits into what Barbara was just talking about. I said to Mark, I can't explain it, but I sense, 1, I'm the cause of everything. 2, I am responsible for everything. 3, my every act of authentic goodness and love moves the universe. 4, my becoming, evolving to Homo Amor is everyone's becoming, evolving to Homo Amor. So I got to confess, that's one way I have responsibility in a meta sense. So in the universal scheme of things, I think we are the cause. Now, back to more like our everyday life. How do we handle that? First, we are pretty sure, as Barbara said, that living from the perspective of being a victim severely limits our possibility to become Homo Amor. We're pretty clear on that one. Now, when I go back to this training exercise I told you about, tell your story as victim, tell your story as responsible. I usually say, okay, and people, for those dramatic, traumatic stories, rape, incest, physical abuse, those dramatic things, don't use those. They might be too much. Pick something else as your story. You got fired, you got divorced, they didn't pay you the money back. Pick one of those. Because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, and if telling the story this way will overwhelm you with guilt and sadness and shame, pick another story. And Mark made the point, he said, we really have to have a way to communicate cause that works even for that group of people. He also pointed out to me one of the problems, and I say this to all of you, I've probably, trained 40 or 50,000 people in my lifetime. And the one thing that's unique about the people I have trained is they've all chosen to be in the training. They've all chosen for me to coach them. They all have probably a little sense of their inherentness that they want me to help them with. Now, that makes them a very selective group. Probably doesn't make them the majority. So that as we come up with our code on causality, we have to have a way of speaking of it that works for everyone, that's unassailable. And this cause notion can be a minefield. Now, generally in the world, people in their everyday lives are responsible in the sense that they're able to respond. That understanding seems to be true and helpful. To claim as an objective truth that people caused what happened in their life is probably neither true nor helpful for most people. And that's the notion we're working on, right now. When I say responsibility, the way I've had it for years is a structure of interpretation in which I declare that I'm fully the cause of what happens in my life, including actions, thoughts, feelings, resulting events. It is not an invitation to a new belief or the truth, but an invitation to choose a perspective. And this is what, if you listen to Krista earlier, she said this, as if it were true. Those are the words Krista used, and we didn't communicate, but she said, I operated as if I was fully responsible, as if I was the cause, while being aware at the same time that it may not be true at all. To choose that perspective of upping your life game, of putting yourself in the driver's seat, will support your inherent commitment to have it matter that you lived. Try it on like a coat, not like the way, the truth, and the light. Now, a few weeks ago, I mentioned that Sartre, the existentialist, postmodern existentialist, says responsibility is to be the uncontested author of an event, authorship. To be aware of responsibility is to be aware of creating oneself. Like something happened when you were a kid and your parents got split and you decided that you weren't lovable, and so on. Creating one's own self and then operating like that's true for the rest of your life. And if such be the case, your own suffering. Like it was true, you caused it. And as Mark points out, there are many more contributors to cause than just you. And remember, existentialists are generally postmodern, which means we made it all up. There are no first values and first principles. One psychiatrist talking about Sartre's nausea, on the roots of the chestnut tree, some of you know that phrase, says Sartre's protagonist confronts the monstrous masses, the very paste of things, stuff that has no form or meaning until he supplies it. The knowledge of his true situation crashes in on him as he discovers his responsibility for the world. The world acquired significance only through the way it is construed by the human being. In Sartre's term, the for itself. There is not meaning in the world or independent of the for itself. And of course, that postmodern interpretation is something that we're really standing for as insufficient, very insufficient. There are first values, there are first principles, there is direction. He goes on to say, both to constitute to be responsible for oneself and one's world is to be aware of one's responsibility is a deeply frightening insight. Consider its implications. Nothing in the world has significance except by virtue of one's own creation. There are no rules, no ethical systems, no values. There is no external referent whatsoever. There is no grand design in the universe. In Sartre's view, the individual alone is the creator. That is went by man is the being whose project is to be God. And of course, if you listen to that and you've been with us, we are diametrically opposed to that, saying, no, that is not true. There is a design, there is a direction, there are first values and first principles. And that's the story we're living in that has us headed to dystopia. This paragraph is one of the best postmodern descriptions I've heard. It sounds a little narcissistic, as Mark has pointed out. Again, responsibility is a chosen perspective, and the conscious choosing liberates and evolves the inherent. It has both individualist and communal possibilities. Remember the African meeting, the village. Responsibility by virtue of I said so, not because it is true. Now, let me give you an illustration from the LifeSpring training. Usually midway through the training, after I've introduced responsibility, I invite 6 or 8 people. I say, here's an opportunity. And they say, what is it? I said, you can be the responsibility team. And all you got to do is say, honestly, I declare I'm fully the cause of what happens in my life, period. And if your word is good and you declare that, you're on the team and I'll call on you later. Now, it's pretty much of a setup because later somebody comes in late to the training and everyone has a promise to be on time. And so I stop and I talk to the person about who's late, about what happened. And then I say, okay, responsibility, stand up. And since they've declared themselves the cause, they're now open to looking and being asked questions that aren't considered at all if they're a victim. So I ask, did you cause that person to be late? And they look at me dumbly like, no, of course not. Well, wait a minute. Didn't you say you were the cause of what happened in your life? And they look at me confusedly and they say, well, I'm responsible for what happens in my life. And I say, well, where's your life? And inevitably they point at themselves. This is my life over here. This skin bag, me, not me. And I say, okay, well, so that's how you got it. Your life ends there with you, this isolated, separate self, this individual. But do you notice whose training is now stopped? Your training is now stopped while this person is late. And at some point, people go, okay, I start asking questions like, why did you cause them to be late? How did you cause them to be late? What was your purpose in causing them to be late? Not coming from, it is true that you caused it, but if you say so, then your mind is open to looking at opportunities for you to act, opportunities for you to have a world that works for everyone, in this case, in the training room. And also to look at where you decide your life is, is it here or is it wider and out there? And so there's great opportunity, great possibility in dealing with people who are strong enough to say, I declare I'm fully the cause in my life and act like it's so, knowing it's probably not, but putting on that mantle to examine and to inquire. And it takes some courage. But as I've said earlier, and you've heard from Barbara and from in the code, there's great joy in looking there. People stand up giddy as they look at that possibility. Now, want to point out that we as human beings are thrown to finding causes. We want to know what caused something, cause and effect. And if you ever study cause and effect, it's a tough, it's a dicey proposition to figure out cause and effect. I used to do this exercise where I would have people, like 6 people on the stage, close their eyes and then have them get shoulder to shoulder together. And then I give a person on one end a little nudge and they'd bump into the next person, next person, next person. And then I'd have them spread apart and I'd say, well, okay, what caused you to move? And it was, well, that person did. Well, no, it wasn't that person. It was the person next to him. No, it was Terry pushing him, and cause becomes effect, becomes cause, becomes effect. But yet we still in life want to find cause and effect, especially for bad stuff. Some of you are aware of this recent Michigan shooting where a 15, 14-year-old kid went in and killed several of his classmates. And we want to know what caused that. And now his parents have been charged with being the cause because they let him have a gun. And I noticed today in the paper, now the school is being sued because they must have caused it with the guidance counselor because they didn't see it. And, in that situation, then it must be the gun manufacturers that did it. And as you look at that, cause leads on to, maybe it was, we should have the parents be there because they didn't love those parents as well as they should have been. So this kid didn't feel like he had to go shoot somebody. Or maybe we all as society ought to be sued, because we're the ones that have the laws that, allow guns to be in homes. So maybe it is us. Maybe I did, maybe I'm in that. Now, that probably is having you be passionately confused more than we were at the beginning. But let me, because we're going into our schedule, and let me close with 2 points. I assume all of you have got at times when you feel gray. I guess you could call it a little depressed. I notice I have been as resilient as I regard myself being. I've been feeling great. I look at the threat to democracy, global warming, recent tornadoes, COVID, the economy, teen suicide, kids are behind in school. And I go, what can I do? Parentheses, what can I cause? And there's times that I feel helpless. But, here's a question for you. Did that nutty little butterfly flapping its wings and singing, "I'm causing a hurricane as I flap my wings," really cause that hurricane? Did that really happen? Well, I want to share with you recently, I decided to do what I could do. So yesterday, I held the door open for the grumpy lady at my health club. She was coming to work and she's always a little grumpy and so on. And she's walking up, she's got a cane. I just stood there, smiled, held the door open, and I got to her and she smiled. Now, I know that last night she went home and she loved her granddaughter in the way her granddaughter got it. And her granddaughter was probably contemplating suicide. And out of that interaction, my love given to her caused her to love. And then the granddaughter didn't commit suicide, but decided to go and make a difference in the world. And the granddaughter, years hence, became a great loving mom. And then her daughter, because she was loved so well, grew up and became fully Homo Amor and created utopia. All because, the ripple I started from loving this grumpy lady that's not easy to love. In thinking about that and me causing it, did that really happen? I don't know. Did I really cause it? I don't know, but I'm working on it. Each cause, is connected to other causes. Maybe the fish or meat I didn't eat is going to cause the environment to clean up. Maybe the trash I didn't throw in the ground will have a ripple effect and clean up the environment. Maybe the gas or coal I decided not to use or let us use, maybe. In conclusion, as Mark says from time to time, this is a new moment, time for a new paradigm, a Leonardo moment. And as I always say, I'm committed to it being that. And whether it's a Leonardo or a Don Quixote, I'm all in. This is the best game in town. I'm fully supportive of what we're doing. I think it's got a chance to change the world. Not a guarantee, but a chance. And I'm all in. And I invite you all to be all in. And over the years, as we worked on this Dharma, even now in wrestling with this distinction, victim, responsible, cause, it gets to be a louder yes. I think this works. I think this is right on the track. And it gives me a hope that I don't have in other places. And in conclusion, as the German mystic Meister Eckhart once said, if the only prayer you ever had to say was thank you, that would suffice. So at this moment, to all of you, thank you.